I can tell you, and part of what we'll do today on the program will be sort of a confessions of a former recruiting analyst as someone who got into the game around 1993. That's what I really started out doing, formed my own recruiting publication, Southeastern Preps Illustrated. Had about a 3 or 4 year run with that. Was involved in the whole 1-900 bit. A lot of you won't admit it anymore, but you called those 1-900 numbers. You know you did. And it's okay. You can come out today and admit it on the program. You can even talk about maybe how much you spent on those 1-900 numbers back in the 90s and maybe even in the 80s as well. But we'll have some reflections on that, I'm sure, over the next couple of days. You know, I got into the recruiting publication business as about a 23-year-old, 22-year-old. Basically decided to do that instead of finishing college. That's what I did. I had to kind of make a choice. Finish college or take on this opportunity to do my own thing with a recruiting publication. Not sure I took the wisest route, but I do think this, and I tweeted something like this yesterday. The best beat writers of college sports that you'll see out there, in my opinion, are the guys and gals who got their start covering recruiting, covering preps. And I believe that because when you have to cover recruiting, especially in the previous format before social media, you had better be resourceful and you had better be competitive. Because there were so many different things that could break at so many different times, and you were limited in your tools. Your toolbox was limited. You know, the break of a commitment has really lost its luster in the last 4 or 5 years because of social media. Prospects, recruits, they're pretty much handling the dispersing the news by themselves. Before that, you were on the phone. You were making phone calls. You were getting stonewalled. You were calling high school coaches. You were calling the mentor. You were calling the uncle of the cousin of the nephew. You were doing all those things, chasing news, being resourceful, networking, building sources, developing relationships of trust with sources, developing relationships on a personal level that a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid would feel comfortable talking with you about their situation more so than maybe the next guy or gal. You don't see that as much anymore. It's kind of become more of a straight shot to the beat job that you're seeing. If you have the opportunity, and people ask me, you know, young journalists, people in journalism school want to be sports writers, cover preps, cover recruiting as early as you can. It'll make you a far better beat writer down the road than you'll ever be just if you go to J school. And that's not to dismiss J school, because any education you can get it. If I could have done both, if I could have finished J school and started a recruiting publication, trust me, I would have done both. I couldn't do both at the time. Looking back in terms of what I benefited the most from, in my opinion, it was the recruiting publication because I had that opportunity. I would have rather have had both. But yeah, just recruiting coverage and the way that it has changed. We'll talk with Cecil about that. And I'll throw some stories out there from my past. In fact, I'll start with one right now. When I had the recruiting publication, James Hardy, this is back around, this is 96. This is right around signing day, 1996. The wife is 8 months pregnant, at least, with the first child, Evan, our oldest, our son. Well, I'm doing sports radio on a remote at a golf course. And this is before cell phones really or anything like that. So I'm on live radio doing it at a remote, talking recruiting, and the golf pro at the golf club comes running up to where we're situated doing the remote and says, "You got a call from your wife," and she says it's an emergency. Well, what do you think I'm thinking?
The baby.
Here comes Evan. Right? I mean, that's all you can think at that point. So I go, oh my goodness. So I tell the host of the show that I'm on with, look, I got to go down and take this call because I'm fully expecting to say Evan's coming a little early and headed to the hospital. I go downstairs to the pro shop, get on the phone, get in touch with Heather, and I go, where are you headed? You going to St. Vincent's? You going to, we were going to Baptist, I think it was, with Evan. No, it was St. Vincent's. And she goes, no. It's not the baby. She goes, Joaquin Fazell, a defensive end from Fort Valley, Georgia, just committed to Michigan. Your contact from Fort Valley just called and told me you needed to know that. Well, because of no cell phones, my contact in Fort Valley couldn't call me at the golf club. He called my office phone in my house at the time. So he calls the house, and the wife knows in February or late January to answer that phone if I'm not there. She answers that phone, the Southeastern Preps Illustrated hotline, James Hardy. Hotline. And in comes the news that Joaquin Fazell, a 5-star defensive end from Fort Valley, Georgia, has verbally committed. This is how news traveled back then in 96. This is just 20 years ago, though. I say back then, you would think it was 1937. This was just 20 years ago. And the wife, that's when I knew she was a keeper, okay? I mean, we were already married and about to have a child. But it was reconfirmed for me that day when she is 8.5 months pregnant and makes the effort to get me the news that Joaquin Fazell from Fort Valley, Georgia, had committed to the University of Michigan. So there you go. There's an old-timey recruiting tale from a recovering, I guess you could say, recruiting analyst.